Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. This week's guest, Guus Krabbenborg, is a longtime contributor to MSDW, and he has had a unique view of the Dynamics channel's evolution. He's had many roles, including time working at Navision, but he has spent the last decade in the partner channel providing training to channel partners, and more recently helping to found QBS Group, an SMB distributor of Dynamics solutions that helps existing Microsoft partners transact on Dynamics deals and improve their performance. QBS has been on the forefront of Microsoft's push to reorganize the Dynamics ERP and CRM channel, as Microsoft has introduced new incentives, less direct support, and a cloud solution provider model that incentivizes speed and repeatability. QBS has built up a network of hundreds of its own partners across more than 15 countries. Guus is also a longtime documentarian when it comes to major Microsoft events like Inspire and formerly WPC. He has a new report coming out, so this was also a good time to catch up and learn more about his latest observations. All right, Guus, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we've known each other for several years now, and you've written a lot for MS Dynamics World, and we've had lots of chances to speak over time. I think you have one of the more interesting sort of stories of your professional changes over the last few years, and obviously it goes back a little ways. But I was wondering if we could start by just talking a little bit about maybe the last, 5 years, 8 years of your own career and sort of some of the things that you've been doing. I think when we first met, your focus was really partner masterclass and consulting and training Microsoft partners in the Dynamics channel. But since then, you've helped found QBS Group, which is a whole nother venture and a lot broader aim and a lot of really exciting growth. Can you tell us a little bit about that evolution of how QBS Group came to be and how you and your partners helped form it, and then maybe we can talk about sort of where it's at today?
Yeah, sure. So I worked my whole professional life in business applications, and the number of years is that big that I'm a bit scary to say the real number, but it's like north of 25 or 30 years already. One of the steps that I made was starting to work for a small Danish company called Navision Software back in 1999. Did that not very long, but long enough to determine that both the product and the channel were pretty interesting. So that's where my, journey in Dynamics started. Left Navision pretty fast, started working for myself, helping partners all over the world in basically everything except technique and functionality. So strategy, sales, marketing, customer satisfaction, successful projects, and things like that. We started Partner Masterclass 2007, so that's 10 years ago, where we were called a PDC, a Partner Development Center. Those companies that were training Dynamics partners in everything except technique and functionality. We've done that pretty successful. Started in Netherlands and Belgium, but then we started growing all over the place in Europe, went to Australia, and trained hundreds of partners. At a certain moment in time, Microsoft asked us if we were interested to step into something called MasterVAR, which by that time was pretty new, at least in Europe. And we said we're interested to do that because we all have our roots in Dynamics companies, both on the VAR and ISV side. We're not competing with partners, as in we do not projects. And we think we deserved our credibilities over time. But we said to Microsoft, we're not just interested in only Netherlands or Belgium, simply because, if you want to do something in this channel, you need to make big investments, especially in the sales and marketing. And we thought that only Netherlands or Belgium would be too small to get a return on that. Well, the story followed that. We signed a contract with Microsoft to start with MasterVAR in 9 countries in Western Europe 4 years ago. And today we are in 17 countries, most of them in Western Europe, including the big ones like UK, France, and Germany. Then we made a start in Central Eastern Europe because we're in Poland now for 2 years. And we have some discussions going on with Microsoft on possibly other regions in the world. The number of partners that we have today is over 400. That's mainly NAV partners and GP partners, so ERP. But we started to explore also the CRM side of the channel. So fast growth, an exciting adventure so far.
Yeah, I mean, the growth really has been incredibly steady because I've been in touch with you, at various points through the whole development of QBS Group, and like you said, it was a milestone when you reached 100 affiliates, or is that the right word that you used to sort of describe the partners who joined the
Well,
network?
we used to say QBS partners, but the
Okay.
official Microsoft term is sales affiliates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and just that growth. I mean, to hear that you've surpassed 400 now, it sounds like uh, it's really been rapid growth, and your early, I think your early assessment that you needed scale sounds like it was completely correct.
Well, what we've seen when Microsoft started this Mastervar in the ERP SMB space some 5 years ago, we saw that there were pretty large numbers of Mastervars. I think it started in the US with 3 Mastervars,
Right.
which is understandable because of the size of the market. But we've also seen pretty small countries with, let's say, less than 10, sometimes even 5 million inhabitants, where we saw 2 Mastervars. Well, it's not rocket science to understand that it's difficult for, 2 of these companies in a pretty small market to make a return on that. So from the beginning, we said, a big footprint is important because we need to scale up in order to develop new services. Because as I think we all know, there's many things going on for the average Dynamics partner. The average Dynamics partner, especially in SMB, is not too large. They're around 20, 25 people, meaning that they don't have all the competencies that they ideally should have. So we saw big chances and opportunities to fill that gap, but we said we need scale to develop those services. And, with 400 plus partners and still steadily growing, I think we're doing the right thing at this moment.
Yeah, and it was interesting when QBS Group first started because there were Mastervars in the U.S. and I remember taking a pretty big interest in that development when it happened, but QBS really took a different tack, I think, in its approach. I'm trying to think of some of the examples, but you really took over, as I recall, order management, and also provided this sort of blend of some of the expertise that you personally, I think, have in training and readiness for partners, but also some sort of collective investment in marketing efforts and go-to-market activities, right? And I think the Mastervar in the U.S. had some differences. And looking back now, I think your model has ended up being the direction that Microsoft chose to kind of expand its own programs to, in my view, almost mirror or carry on from what you may have started with them.
Well, I think a big difference between our company and some of the other Mastervars is that we were not a value-added reseller. So,
exactly.
if you think about the word Mastervar, I still think it's not an ideal term.
And that's not even used anymore, is it?
No. Because a Mastervar program, you could say now is moved into the CSP arena, which is, of course, a different ballgame. We can talk about that in a minute, maybe. But Mastervar means that you take one VAR in a region or a country and say, you become the Mastervar, meaning you have to help and guide, let's say, the smaller partners. You have to generate leads for them, and in return, they have to share pipeline. But we all feel that a VAR and a Mastervar potentially could be competitors, potentially could have their names on the same shortlist, and could go after the same deal. Well, there's no partner in the world willing to share a pipeline with a potential competitor. With our background, coming from training, coaching, but have a lot of practical experience for many years in different parts of the Dynamics market, but not doing projects, we were not seen as competitors, so there was no channel conflict. I think that's one of the reasons why we are perceived as a neutral positive rather than threatening somebody's business. And I think the second thing compared to some of the Mastervars is that we said, you can join us as you are, as where other Mastervars said, you can only join us if you change your name and become, a part of the Mastervar name. And what I've seen over time, if you want to hit a entrepreneur between the eyes as hard as you can, you need to take away their name because name equals identity. So I think these are 2 important things that sets us apart from I would say, the majority of other partners in Mastervar.
Yeah, I mean, what are some of the elements of the program that you offer at QBS that you think resonate the most with your QBS partners?
Well, we started, of course, with the official program. So a couple of services were mandatory, like order processing, processing licenses business, but also the whole prep business and admin. It's a whole lot of work. It's something that we started doing. Just to give you an indication, last year, our partner care department processed more than 22,000 single deals. So there could be new deals, there could be changes in prep, and also that, right? 22,000, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty massive. We do that in multiple languages in multiple countries. So that's quite an organization. And it proves, that you need to have scale to be able to do something like that, multi-language, in multiple countries. So there were another, let's say, series of services that were mandatory or recommended by Microsoft. But I think over time we succeeded in, evolving those services, bringing to a higher level. I think one of the advantages that from our start and from our roots, we were trainers and coaches for partners. So that's something that we definitely went on with. And I think today most partners need more help on strategy, making choices, moving forward in terms of cloud transformation, the type of market they go after, the need for verticalization or better verticalization. So I think with our training background, we're in a pretty well placed. Mm-hmm. And, over the past few years, I think we were very busy in professionalizing our services. I want to mention one, which is a service called Take the Lead. So we've seen that, marketing is the weakest muscle in the partner channel. And that's no surprise, because if you look at the SAP channel, the Infor channel, the whatever channel, that's the same situation there. I would say typically a bit black and white, but partners are looking to the vendor and say, where are the leads? And where the vendor says, I can make up some product leads, but, the really leads from companies into specific verticals, these leads have to be generated with vertical messages. And of course, they should come from partners. So, we started our journey in helping partners, training partners, showing the way to do it, and so forth and so further, until we came to a point where we realized that, if you're 20 people, a business, you maximum will have, half an employee for marketing maybe. And half a person for marketing, 20 hours a week, is probably not enough to have a professional nurturing process, to have investment to buy all the tools. So that's the point where we decided to say, what if we do the nurturing process? What if we take care of prospects, and as we say in Europe, suspective prospects? So people, let's say 18 to 24 months or even 36 months away from a deal. Once they show their interest, why not put these prospects in our machine where we guide them, where we nurture them, where we have enough scale to invest in tools and tooling, think marketing automation and order tooling, actually to bring them not to an MQL marketing qualified lead, but one step ahead, bring them to a sales qualified lead. So that's a program where we invested a lot of time, money, and energy, and we're about now to roll out in a number of countries, and the first results of that are pretty positive. And I think, the ultimate goal for us is to bring our services as close as we can to signing deals and winning more deals, because at the end, that's all that matters for a partner. That's all that matters for Microsoft. And of course, in the end, that's all that matters for us.
That competitiveness is maybe another area to talk about here. Do you think the VARs that you work with, or maybe the ISV, we could expand that to ISVs too, but do you think they feel like they're able to be competitive in the marketplace against other ERPs out there? And I don't know, can you talk about that broadly, or does it vary by country?
Well, if you talk about ISVs, I think in general you can say that the majority of ISVs is pretty small. The size means that they're not really equipped professionally to do marketing. And I don't talk about, the big ones like LS Retail or To Increase, because I think some of them are really top of the bill. But if you take the average ISV, very often they're stated and founded by technical people. And, they might need help in their marketing, in their positioning. And if we talk about the movements that Microsoft is making towards app source, they might need support as well in making steps across borders and go international. So what we did is we built an ISV program for two reasons. One of them is to help ISVs get more scale. And, a lot of ISVs say, rather than hiring salespeople for 17 countries and spend a lot of time and money, I'd rather have my proposition in the total proposition of QBS, so that this is, distributed in all those 17 countries. And QBS could help me to find the right partners. That's one side. The other side is that we believe that, huge customizations with long-lasting projects, very expensive and high risk, that's not the future. That's definitely not the future. So the other side of the story is that we want to help our VARs, again, most of them have a traditional background, to get them into a position that they specialize or verticalize or both, based on, repeatable standard solutions. So in that situation, we're more sort of a broker bringing together the supply of the smaller ISVs, often locally situated on an international scale, and then combine that with the need for the VARs to, become more repeatable in order to stay relevant and healthy for the near future.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I know you were at Inspire, and it's something that just I find I'm able to keep talking to people about, even now that we're about 4 or 5 weeks out of it at this point. You did a lot of you really documented it well. You had a nice little series of video blogs or vlogs that you posted that I thought were pretty informative about your impressions at the event. Coming out of it, how impactful was Inspire? Or is there anything that you've sort of developed a view on since the event that maybe changed the way you're approaching things?
Well, maybe two things to say on this, Jason. The first one is you mentioned the documentation. So, what we see is that Dynamics partners today live in a very, you could say, exciting world. Some people will say overwhelming, because there's so many things changing at the same time. And we see that many partners have difficulties, to stay on top of all the information. Some people really use the word tsunami if they talk about, the number of information and emails and sites and blogs and Yammer sites and what have you, to stay ahead and keep informed. So, one of the things that we said we could do probably better is, select information and bring the most relevant information and the most urgent information to the attention of our partners. And over time, this grew to a mantra that we use today in all of our countries, saying, QBS partners are the best informed Microsoft partners. And that's not, that we try to be arrogant, but, that's the mantra is maybe more for internal, where we say we have to do everything we can to bring the right information when it's urgent in the right format to the attention of our partners. So we do that in several ways, and one of the ways of doing that is writing business reports. So myself, I have been writing these reports since WPC in 2004. That was my first one in Toronto. So just until we started this webinar or this call, I was writing, and I have to do some more writing in the next week and a half to finalize the report on Inspire. That will be report number 14, which is, of course, a registration of the things that were happening, but it's not just copying the stuff that's on the slides. It's more like, what is the impact? What is changing? So what does it mean for partners? What are the go-dos? What are the don't-dos? Very practical advice. And over the last 12 months, we did similar for the event's Directions in last October in Prague, Directions EMEA, and we did the same on Extreme 365, the CRM event in Lisbon last March. So, these are things that we do where we say, the reports are, quote unquote, for free for all QBS partners because they pay a membership fee, and part of that fee is that they get these reports. And of course, if partners are not QBS partner or not yet a QBS partner, we're happy to sell a copy to them for a reasonable price. So that's one thing on that. The second thing is your question around Inspire. So I would say, different than from other years, I thought there was not so much news on the product side. And if you think a little bit about that, it might be not so surprisingly, because we come from an era where Microsoft came up with a new version every 2 years, and they did everything they could to launch new versions on their most important events, like WPC or Inspire, as we call it today. But since we moved from 2 years to 1 year to in the cloud every 3 months, every month, I would say we should think it's normal that there's not big product announcements every 2 years, every year, because product announcements come every week, every month, because that's the world of SaaS. So it was not so much the product. I think it was more around the change that Microsoft is making now in her sales organization and sales approach. So there have been a lot of talks about and rumors about the reorganization. I know you and I discussed it over a reception in Washington, D.C., which of course had the impact that a lot of partners were questioning, what does it mean for me? What is happening with my contact person? What's happening with my local teams? Who's going to stay? Who's going to leave? There was one thing. And the second thing is the announcement of OCP, the One Commercial Partner Organization, which I think are the two most important things for me on the Inspire event.
Yeah, and as I recall, there was still, I think even to this point, there's a lot of dust that has to settle within Microsoft before partners were able to sort of get a good understanding of who their contacts are, who has stayed, who has departed, who has maybe just changed roles, right? At the country level, I think.
Well, I think in general, what you can see is that Microsoft decided a year and a half ago to sell Dynamics 365 only through CSP, Cloud Solution Provider Program.
Right.
And, if you take a few steps back, you might say that this could be seen as a move from a direct approach with Microsoft to sort of a disty approach. And I remember back in 2001, 2002, where Microsoft acquired first Great Plains and then in 2002 Navision Software, I wrote an analysis and I looked it back. I took it, the old document, and it says something like, it's pretty likely that Microsoft will introduce her distribution policies, well known from the Microsoft Classic organization, in the Dynamics channel. And the interesting point is that in the Microsoft Classic organization, I know it's a forbidden word, but traditionally Microsoft always worked with disties. And you could say it took them like 14, 15 years to start doing the same with the Dynamics products. So having said that, it means that the number of partners that will be directly managed by Microsoft in the Dynamics space will probably get much smaller. At least that's what the first predictions say. But to be honest, if you would have asked me last year, my rough estimate would be that in the Dynamics world, 20 to 40% of all the partners had a partner account manager or a PSE or a PCDM. They've changed the names over years. As for the traditional Microsoft world, I think less than 5% was directly managed. So, now we say that Dynamics 365 basically means that Dynamics is the heart of the Microsoft stack, and it's now mainstream. I think we all should accept and learn that being mainstream means that Dynamics is not an island anymore with all kind of exotic rules, margins, prices, and whatever, but that we're mainstream now, not just with product, but also with things like partner management, things like contracts, and so on. And I think that's a big change for this channel.
Yeah, no question. I think one of the big questions for the future is which kind of distributor is going to succeed. Is it going to be one particular kind? I look at the different models that are out there. I think, you could certainly say that QBS Group and some of the other CSPs that kind of have a Dynamics or a business solutions heritage to them are sort of represent one approach. And then you have the big disties, the Tech Datas and Ingram Micros of the world that are really just coming from a completely different direction. But Microsoft has, I know, at least in the last couple of years, indicated that they were very eager to get those types of businesses to add, update their portfolios with not only Office 365, but Dynamics 365 as well. And I don't know, I actually have another. I did an interview recently with someone else, with Harold Horgan of the York Group, who sometimes consults on partner to partner relationships, and he was actually fairly pessimistic on those kinds of organizations being successful. I think the analog, or sort of the complement to that, is that companies with more of a business solutions approach, who have evolved to support a distribution model, are maybe better positioned to meet Microsoft's needs.
Well, I think there's like, say, you could say two sort of groups in this distri world. One is the traditional ones, the names you already mentioned. Most of them are very big. They're transaction oriented. They're international. I think their marketing is okay, but their focus is on high volumes and, let's say, moderate or low value. Companies like SBS in the US and QBS in Europe, I think we do it differently. We're not necessarily focusing on huge volumes, but we definitely want to set ourselves apart based on high value. So I think that's an interesting move going forward, to see which of those models would be most interesting. Despite the fact that Dynamics 365 is mainstream, I would say that the average Dynamics partner still has, live with 2 feet in the Dynamics world. They have a customer base with NAV or GP or AX or CRM or a combination of all that. So they will still need, knowledge and competencies and people that show them the way in the complex Microsoft organization. So we think we have, a compelling offering for these guys there. And what we see now is that it seems that the reorganization will lead to smaller teams managing less partners, and the partners who will be a managed partner probably will not be managed by a Microsoft Dynamics person anymore, but by a Microsoft person. So I think, for the Dynamics specialized distries, such as SBS and ourselves, it's an interesting time to see what the bigger partners will do if they're looking for alternative support.
What are your hopes for some of those legacy VARs in the next 12 months? I know you talk to, you still run classes and workshops, right? Are there things you hope to see those types of businesses change about themselves in the near future?
Well, let me say in general, Jason, that change is not easy. And if I do workshops or presentations at events, I like to challenge the audience and ask people to show their hands if they say, who likes change. But what I see, and also what I experience personally, the older I get, the more I say, to my wife, she wants to change me. Why? Why, honey? Why should I do it? Rather than let's do it, right? Where my kids say, okay, let's do it a different way without asking why. So, I would say in general, the human species is not excellent in changing. That's the first one. And the second observation is the older you get, the more resistant you are to change. Now, if you look at these business owners of Dynamics companies, these are guys, most of them jumped, at least in Europe, most of them jumped on the NAV wagon somewhere in the mid-90s, right? When the software from Denmark came all over Europe. Mm-hmm. And the guys who jumped as an entrepreneur on this product in that time, most of them were in their strengths of their life, in the 35 to 40 years old. Well, if you add 25 years on that, 20 to 25, then you understand that most of the business owners have an age now, with a small joke, where they rather think about maybe growing a ponytail, buying a Harley Davidson and a younger girlfriend, rather than thinking about repeatability and SEO. So, I think it's realistic to see that most of the business owners have their worries on paying salaries and, get their pension ready. And they're not so open-minded to risk rather than young people. So, I see different examples. I see partners, even though they're already thinking about the girlfriend and the Harley Davidson stuff, that still say, let's embrace change and open a new arm and start something doing cloud/product/repeatable. I also see partners that don't move at all and, say that they don't want or don't need it. So it will be interesting to see. And, Darwin said something about it's not the strongest that survive, but the most flexible ones. I think that will be valid here as well. And then on top of that, I think that the Microsoft Dynamics channel will need new blood. And interesting, that's not just in Microsoft, because the ERP channels in SAP and Infor had the same history, have the same average age on business owners. So also these guys need new blood. Right, so it will be an interesting time to see who is going to change, who is not going to change or not yet, and in which extent new partners will join the channel.
Yeah, that's interesting. Will they get new blood? The other thing I've been thinking about is will they end up just sort of selling to larger firms, and you really don't get new blood? You just get sort of more VARs that are conglomerates of other ones. I am very interested, though. I would love, and I would personally be pretty interested to see, like you said, younger executives stepping up, taking over some of these businesses, as opposed to founders who reach a certain age and just sort of sell their client list and their property and their business and their team to a larger firm, which I think is honestly going to be the more common exit, if I had to guess.
Well, I did an interview since 2 years ago. We started doing interviews for these business reports.
Right.
So in Washington, I had an interview with Jeff Edwards, and Jeff is responsible for partner strategy in Microsoft ERP.
Sure.
As we also did an interview with Marco Perisic, the R&D guy for Dynamics 365 Business Edition and SMB Market. And the discussion with Jeff, we also talked about the change in the market and the impact on partners. So we spent quite some time on mergers and acquisitions, the changes there. He is very often consulted by potential buyers, who are interested to know what the state of the market is and what Microsoft's opinion is about partners in general, or maybe specific partners. So he has a pretty good view. What he sees is that the majority of all the acquisitions today are CRM practices that have been acquired by AX partners or Dynamics 365 Enterprise Edition partners. I expect with Microsoft continuing all the packaging like we see in Dynamics 365, like we see in Microsoft 365, it means that the traditional single category partner, single category as in I only do NAV or GP or CRM, they're forced to get a broader proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, merger and acquisition are one way of doing that. So that could be a way out for the people that are interested in the ponytail and the Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
The question, of course, is, at what price? That's an interesting question that we'll have to see.
And speaking of the reports, I did want to mention before we wrapped up, you mentioned a bit of it, but you do have a new one that's going to be published quite soon, right?
Yeah, so we have been working with a team of 8 colleagues on the report. You visited Inspire yourself, so there's hundreds and hundreds of sessions, and it's really simply impossible for a single person to attend all of them. Even with a team of 8, it was very hard to do, but we made a schedule up front and we divided tasks. So, by writing the report with 8 guys, we can cover much more sessions and much more domains. So it means that the report probably will be, and hopefully will be, more interesting because it's broader and more depth. And like I said, it includes 2 interviews, which I think is sort of exclusive content, where you don't have to sit and wait what Microsoft is willing to share. But in an interview under 4 eyes, of course, you can take the lead and come up with questions that can, at the end, bring interesting answers. So the report will be available Friday next week. And if you go to the website from QBS, it's qbsgroup.com, you'll find more information on that.
All right, excellent. We'll link that up, and hopefully you'll give us a little bit more of a look into what's in that report. I've always really enjoyed being able to sort of publish excerpts and little previews of as your new reports come out. I know they're a real fixture of the Microsoft channel at this point after so many years. I don't know, anything else going on that you wanted to talk about that you had on your mind for upcoming events, upcoming product releases?
Well, I think that the move for the ERP partners, the ones that we traditionally served and still do in QBS, the move to CRM is a very important one.
Yeah.
We know traditionally that the products were silos, and the effect was that the partner channels were siloed and the Microsoft teams were siloed. So what we see now is that the products get integrated better than ever before, which is good because it's the strongest point that Microsoft can sell. What we see is that Microsoft is changing their organization. This OCP organization is also meant to sell one Microsoft rather than selling separate products. And then, of course, it has an impact on the partner channel as well. So in QBS, we decided last summer to also embrace the CRM partners. And what we did, we built a Dynamics 365 CRM acceleration program, which basically is a program that helps partners to set up a CRM practice. And it's, of course, technical and functional knowledge is an important part, but unlike other training programs, it's not just there, it doesn't stop there. So it includes, strategy, help on getting verticalized or specialized. It includes this Take the Lead program that I just mentioned, and it even includes sales support. So this program is really designed to have an end-to-end program for partners that want to start a CRM practice. Now, we see a great demand for setting up CRM practices. I know Microsoft sees great demands. I've seen some figures for Western Europe. That are pretty ambitious on the numbers of partners that they want to find, acquire, train, and enable. And it seems that Microsoft likes our program and embraces that program, so that we will roll out the program in many countries, at least in EMEA. And the interesting point is that it gives not just Office 365 or SharePoint or Azure partners the possibility to step in, but of course it gives also a great chance for existing ERP partners, NAV, GP, SL, AX, to also start a CRM practice. Because I think over time, if you stay on your single category, not changing, you're not only under risk for new business and new licenses, but also your customer base is under risk. Because, I would assume that every ERP customer, sooner or later, will need a professional CRM system. And that's not the CRM module anymore for NAV, AX, or GP. So, we are preparing for enabling the partners that we work with for CRM and finding new ones. And I think that's a pretty important trend. There is this event called Directions EMEA, at least the one EMEA is for us interesting. There's also a US edition this fall, so that's September and October. And that was traditionally an NAV event, and that now, for the first time, will be ERP and CRM. So we're really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I think that's a great indicator of that trend. Directions has broadened to talk about CRM, and likewise, the Extreme 365 event that you mentioned earlier has also expanded to talk about both. I think they and their boards also. Both of those events, their boards recognize that's a must-have now, and Microsoft demands it. And like you said, I think businesses are going to start demanding it more and more. It's not going to be something partners can hide from. Great point.
Yep.
All right. Well, Guus, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll definitely look forward to the upcoming report and put a link through to that as well. And I hope to see you out on the road as I have in the past at some upcoming event. Right.
We definitely will. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Jason.
This has been the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to Guus for joining. We want to hear what you think about the podcast. You can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.